What happened in qualifying for
the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix?
It is Saudi Arabian Grand Prix qualifying edition. A lot of things to talk about, so let's dive straight into Q1. The bottom five were Stroll, Doohan, Hülkenberg, Ocon and Bortoleto. First question, HM Peach. Not a question. Great, so there we go, not a question. But seeing that Lance Stroll now has the record for the most Q1 exits ever, any thoughts? Feelings? So Lance Stroll, if you missed this, has broken the record, for the most Q1 exits in F1 history. 75 Q1 exits.
Yeah, that. And how many races has he done? 170.
76.
He did 170 starts, had 75 Q1 exits. And this is the thing. Was it Magnussen? I believe what I heard was that who he took the record from. And you understand that K-Mag, he's driven a lot of wheelie bins in his career. He's been driving for Haas a lot of the time, who are a backmarker. But of course, Aston Martin, they had that great year in 2023 where the car looked very quick. He's driven a very quick racing point in his career. We go on about Charles Leclerc being one of the greatest qualifiers of all time. Lance Stroll is probably the worst qualifier of all time. I'm going to say it right here on this podcast.
Wow,
he is abysmal at qualifying, and he always has been.
Okay, wow, goodness gracious me. Don't mince your words there, Tommy. But he has been a very poor qualifier. But then just randomly pops up occasionally in P9 and you go, oh, Lance, how did you manage that? Other drivers to talk about, Esteban Ocon. I can't believe we're talking about him so much. And 19th, which I think is the same as last time we were talking about qualifying, only last week, where he just cannot get the same performance out of that Haas as Ollie Behrman. You blink, though, in the race, and Haas have rolled the dice with an undercut, and he's right there fighting for the points again. But it does make you wonder just whether there is this massive discrepancy between quali pace and race pace in the Haas, or if Esteban just can't get that same feeling as he does in the race, because you don't expect this from Ocon.
He qualified very poorly, didn't he, at the end of his kind of Alpine career as well, and we were questioning, maybe, it's just that have they just kind of don't care about Ocon anymore, goodbye, and it's like a Red Bull situation. But he's kind of taken that poor qualifying form into his Haas career as well. Yeah,
but we have also seen some great qualifyings from Ocon, and it's not something that he lacks in his locker, I would argue. And to be out-qualified by a Sauber is pretty much unforgivable, sadly. So back row of the grid for Ocon. Hülkenberg, as I mentioned, 18th. Jack Doohan, that's
a bit of a worry when Gasly is 9th.
Yeah, it's not good enough for Doohan, sadly, around a track that is incredibly grippy. So difficult for Doohan again, and he does need to start taking a step up now. Otherwise, his fate will be sealed. Maybe it already is. We don't know. Let's get to Q2 then. And the bottom five in this session were Albon, Lawson, Alonso, Hadjar and Behrman. Not the craziest of sort of the lineup of drivers that have got out in Q2 there. Albon just about missing out. In the Williams, the racing balls looking like they're slipping further and further away over one lap pace at least. And Alonso, it felt like at one point was going to be popping it in sort of P7, P8. He was looking quite strong, but I think his final Q2 lap just wasn't what he was hoping for.
The thing I look at there is Racing Bulls, who we had this discussion in the watch along. They're going to be kicking themselves that they didn't grab a bucket load of points in those first few races when they looked like the fifth best car, and Yuki Tsunoda was popping it P5 and 6 in qualifying, and Hadjar was up in P7. Huge kind of missed opportunity. The only kind of positive there really is Lawson maybe picking up his form after what's been an absolute stinker to out-qualify Hadjar. Maybe more what we kind of have expected from him, because he has been one of the poorest drivers of the year, even after going into the Racing Bulls. So it's a bit more positive from him, but it's still disappointing for them not to be in Q3.
And finally, I just want to talk about Ollie Behrman, because I thought he might well be cooking for a little Q3 appearance, and then had a very scrappy final Q2 lap, which then puts him 15th. Perhaps that Haas, we were seeing it with Ocon, quite a difficult car to qualify with. That's at least what we're seeing. But It's race trim. That's all. It doesn't matter about quali. When good surprise comes in and he finishes P10, I ain't going to be complaining.
I don't know if I even buy the Haas isn't that good in qualifying. I think he's left. He was slower actually in Q2 than he was in Q1 by a tenth.
You do wonder, actually, after watching testing, where they literally tootled around the back the entire test, didn't bother really ever doing fast laps.
Yeah.
And then they're like, why are we not quicker than
Why not?
one
Why
lap?
are we quicker in qualifying? Yeah, it is so true. But yeah, the performance does seem to be a little bit all over the place, or maybe it's just how close that midfield is, and a mistake here and there, or a really good performance can rocket you up the standings.
Right, let's get into the big one then. This is what you've all been waiting for. Q3. The top 10, as of right now, stands Verstappen, Piastri, Russell, Leclerc, Antonelli, Sainz, Hamilton, Tsunoda, Gasly, Norris. Okay, first question in this Q3 segment. P1 Patreon member Zingy13. How can Lando iron out the mistakes as these are costing him in what is looking to be a tight championship? I think coming into this weekend, it did feel like Lando's going to be struggling slightly more in terms of just locking in compared to Piastri, that I would say is ice cold. He had that mistake in Australia, but apart from that, Piastri is performing to the level that he can. For Lando, and I will maintain this opinion no matter what anyone says, Lando is a quicker driver than Oscar over one lap if his true potential is shown. But the problem is mistakes creep in, and this is where we've seen Q3 track limits. We've seen this crash today. And I feel like is Lando looking to the garage next to him in Oscar and going, I've got a proper championship fight on my hands against my teammate, and obviously we'll get on to Max shortly, where he's feeling like he needs to go to a level that he can get to, but it brings in mistakes. And this is such a costly one. It's not an absolute disaster when we said this again, where if he can come through in the fastest car, but he has to be beating Piastri. He does at this stage of the season, because I fully see in Oscar's future, with how impressive he's been at the start, that he's still only going to get better, is Piastri. He's in the start of his third season. He's not the finished product.
You go back to Australia, and it was Piastri was the one that went off the road, made the mistake. Lando withheld the pressure of Max Verstappen in a race that threw multiple safety cars, and the narrative after that race was, okay, Lando can fight for this championship and he can deal with the mental pressure. But since then, he's had the problems in the sprint in China. Then we go into Bahrain, where he's had a difficult race as well. And this is just a huge error, and it's kind of, he's making headlines for all the wrong reasons, and it's becoming a thing, sadly, for Lando. I thought it was fascinating in the last qualifying podcast we did, where Alex was talking about how he shouldn't be beating himself up after the session because you had more pressure on yourself and that kind of thing. And you do wonder these champions where, Piastri's got that mentor in Mark Webber, and Lewis Hamilton has surrounded himself with Angela, for example, who gets him in a great headspace and things like that. And does Lando need someone like that, or kind of can he work on himself on that side? Because these mistakes are creeping in, and he's such a good driver and he's a quick driver. He just needs to iron out these mistakes, and unfortunately, at the moment, they're happening too frequently.
Next question, P1 Patreon member Savage Monkey 3.0. How is it possible for Norris to keep making these types of mistakes after being in his 7th season, while Piastri is in his 3rd and being a way more completed driver for the championship? No hate, it says at the end as well, just to clarify. How is it possible? Look, I think that we're forgetting they're all humans. They all have their own characteristics. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses. We've seen drivers make mistakes for championships across most seasons. Vettel, for example, when he was fighting at Ferrari, just one thing that comes to mind where mistakes slip in. Piastri's in a great part of his career. There's no doubt about that. He has solidified himself as a fantastic driver, but we don't know how he deals with pressure, in the sense of leading the championship, getting all those questions, becoming the favourite, which he now is. He's now the favourite for the championship, I think, in the bookies and all this sort of stuff. We don't know yet. Norris, I still believe, will continue to learn about this, not just from a driving perspective, but also from how does he prepare himself for a championship fight, he does need the support around him. He needs the team around him. He needs whatever it might be, sports psychologist or however it is. That's McLaren's job, as well as Lando's, to find the right solution there.
He is having a poor run, and I think it's something that he needs to look into in this kind of break and kind of, get back in a good headspace, because it's been a difficult start when Oscar was the one that made that mistake in the first race, and Lando had a brilliant race, and we were thinking, how costly is that error going to be for Oscar? But instead, here we are now looking at the fact that Lando's the one making loads of errors, and Lando's the one still leading the championship, but by a very minimal margin now.
I will also add into that we say that Oscar makes that mistake in Australia. Lando made exactly the same mistake, but just about half a car length less deep.
Oh yeah, I'm not denying it's more worrying that Lando's mistakes have all been kind of dry qualifying. I mean, it's qualifying is the big one here. I know he had a poor Bahrain Grand Prix getting through the field and made mistakes there, but how many? We've gone into this weekend mentioning that Lando, it feels like for the entire year, hasn't ever managed to get 2 qualifying laps in. There always seems to be one with a mistake, and then he does the other. And this time he's crashed in Q3 when the pressure is on. This is the bit where you do need to deliver. And I know it's Drive to Survive, but he even spoke about it in that kind of mentioning that he can get in his own head a bit. So that's something he needs to work on, I think.
Certainly does. Next question, Joe Wynnham. How did Max do that? People don't want to call Max a generational talent, but I think the lap in Suzuka in today shows just what difference he can make in a car. I'm sorry, who on earth is calling Max not a generational talent? I would love to know, because he is categorically a generational talent. I don't care what anybody says on that, because what more does he need to do? He's in an S-Box, delivers. He's in a dominant car. He breaks every record known to man in terms of length of win streak, etc., etc. Max is the best driver on the grid. We have I know we've joked about, obviously, Lance Stroll breaking the Q1 exit, but generally speaking, the grid is a very strong one in 2025 as well. So how did Max do that? Because when the car is alive, which it became, and they were surprised to see it, alive in Q3 especially, he will deliver. You don't see mistakes from Max Verstappen, hardly ever. So how did he do it? It's Verstappen. I know that people don't like dominance, for example, in the last few years. Max always winning, blah, 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 he's got the best car. He doesn't have the best car now, and we're seeing utterly brilliant performances. Just enjoy it.
Just think as well, we're talking about pressure and all that and all that kind of side of the sport and how difficult it is. This whole Formula One weekend going into this was all about Max Verstappen. Is he going to leave Red Bull? Oh, the car's terrible, isn't it? What are you going to do? Are you going to leave? Are you going to go to Aston Martin? All bombarded with questions in the press conferences, and then he delivers a lap like that. Yeah, it is the ultimate mic drop, and it's just a sign of an unbelievable driver and one of the best drivers we'll ever see in Formula One. Whether you think he's the best or not, you can't argue that he's not one of the best we've ever seen in Formula One.
Next question, at Northant's Hammer. Was it all a massive overreaction last week when people were saying how poor the Red Bull is? P1 in Japan and P1 again today. Bahrain was likely an anomaly. Bahrain, very aggressive on the tyres. We know that McLaren are incredibly good at keeping their tyres in a good window. And that's why we saw Oscar just dominate the race and drive away from pole position. I think it is likely to see when tracks have a higher grip, like a really lovely surface like we have in Saudi, that's when the car becomes a lot better. I think we will see peaks and troughs with Red Bull. I don't think we're going to go, Bahrain's the only anomaly here, done and dusted, Max is back, he's winning the championship. I'm not convinced of that at all. But I think it's more likely that he will be able to thrust that car into the top 3, top 4 than perhaps these outliers like Bahrain.
The Red Bull is poor because it doesn't have a great window, and that is the thing here. And it is so similar to the end of last year, where they would win a race and then be nowhere, sometimes even between the sprint and the main race. it's such a fine margin, and we know that when Max can get that car where he likes it, he will deliver and can even somehow put it on pole and even win races. But it's such a kind of narrow margin that I would not be surprised if we go into the next race and they're literally fighting for 6th again. And yeah, that's just how Red Bull, I think, are going to go. So it just needs to keep picking up points until that change, and whether that helps them, we have to find out.
P1 Patreon member Block Dead 1.1. With Lewis below Carlos, did Ferrari sign the wrong driver? Here we go. But this is, of course, linked with the fact that Hamilton is starting behind Carlos Sainz, which is factual evidence. Sainz starts 6th, Hamilton starts 7th. And I guess apart from Hamilton in China, which may well turn out to be an outlier, or Ferrari got it very right with him in the car, and he got it very right to do a phenomenal job at the China sprint. Don't get me wrong. He did an incredible job there. But apart from that, yeah, his poor form from just last year at the Mercedes in qualifying has carried over to Ferrari now that it seems Charles has got a handle of the car and how he likes it. It's sad to see. I want to see Hamilton right there with Leclerc, ideally half a tenth behind. But still, they're fighting around the top 5. But he's back-to-back weekends now seem to struggle at very different tracks.
I think a lot of this, you don't need to put a driver down. Just some respect on Carlos Sainz for doing a brilliant job, and this is more where we thought he was going to be this year. It hasn't happened for him so far. We saw glimpses of it in Bahrain, and he's done an amazing job. I just wish he'd, even though it had been over the expense of Antonelli, got into P5, so I could have replied to some comments that were saying, what was I smoking when I put in P5 in the top 5? But alas, he did not. But a great performance from Sainz, and this is what we were expecting him to do this year.
Next question, P1 Patreon member CapTedObs3420. I know Matt won't want to hear this. I love starting a question with that in the first part of it. But should Ferrari throw in the towel and focus on 2026? Yep, chuck it in there. Guys, the white flag is being waved from both the drivers and also the fans. It comes back to what you were saying, Tommy, in the pre-season predictions, that if Ferrari aren't quick, they should just chuck the towel in. And I would much rather them be really good in 26 than even try to claw back what is a massive deficit to McLaren in my eyes. I know it's 0.3 back to Piastri, or Piastri's in front to Charles Leclerc, but in the race trim, they just don't have it either. So, I need to go and cry in a dark corner because, we both predicted Charles Leclerc pole position round here. I thought maybe a front row coming into it would be possible, but no chance.
You kind of beat me to it there. I was going to say, do I need to say anything here, or can you just go on after listening to this podcast, click on pre-season predictions before we saw any testing? And I said that Ferrari, biggest flop. Why have they changed their car completely into a new season? And they will basically sack it in immediately after the first 4 races when they're not winning, and McLaren are clear. So you're welcome.
Broken clock is right twice a day. There you go, Tommy. Well done. So happy. And what a way to end this podcast. Really enjoyed that. Just finished it on a real high note. But you best believe tomorrow, watch along. Charles Leclerc gets Russell at the start. Podium on. Verstappen and Piastri have a little ding dong. Charles Leclerc comes through. There we go. Love to see it. Tommy, what are your final thoughts?
It's not the same. I'm not going to pretend it isn't, but I'm almost getting a little taste of that Ferrari lifestyle, but maybe slightly opposite, the other way around. Rather than it being one race, it's just that kind of Verstappen.
One bad race, and you're
that's what I mean. It's the opposite. It's the opposite way around, where you have one good race and you go, oh, championship back on. Actually, have one bad race and go, yeah, Max is out of it. It's never happening. And now I'm like, could he? But
you haven't tasted anywhere near the pain and depression.
It's definitely more enjoyable though, watching him be the underdog and deliver those moments, because they feel massive to be able to take the fight to McLaren, and just a great qualifying again. and I can't wait for the race.
Yeah, it's set up the race beautifully. So we'll be live on Twitch and YouTube as always. Come and watch along to the race with us. And that is it. We'll see you very soon. Lots of love. Take care. Adios. Goodbye.
Goodbye.